All right, and we are live. Good evening, gamers, and welcome to episode 15 of Games with Dave. Tonight, I am thrilled to be joined by game designer and Robert E. Howard aficionado. All right, and we are live. Good evening, I am hearing myself. And welcome to episode 15 of Games with Dave. I know why. Tonight, I am thrilled to be joined. I'm going to close that window. Sorry about that, folks. But as I was saying, I am thrilled to be joined by game designer and Robert E. Howard aficionado, Mark Finn. Mark is currently running a ZineQuest project, Polite Society, the zine for Thieves, Scoundrels, and Ne'er-do-wells. If you play Thieves, Rogues, or anyone who may need to commit some thievery, this new quarterly zine is right up your alley. If you haven't backed this Kickstarter yet and have a passion for Thieves and Rogues like this guy does, you're going to want to jump over and back this Kickstarter like it was yesterday. There's a link right down below in the description. Thanks for joining me tonight, Mark. I'm thrilled to have you on.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here.
All right. I just got to get one thing to function here real quick. I promise I know what I'm doing, but all right. So it looks like we are good. Sorry about that.
All right.
I cannot properly express how thrilled I am for these zines to be coming out. I mean, if you ask anyone in my groups, I typically tend to play Rogues because I love Rogues, and that's just what there is now, except for in DCC, where I'm playing, you guessed it, a thief.
Right.
So, Mark, what made you go with kickstarting 4 zines at once versus doing them one at a time?
Okay, that's a great question. Originally, this project, when I started writing on it several years ago, was going to be a splat book. You know, it was going to be a complete set of rules with the new stuff, and here's your extra things, and it's everything you want for a campaign book, that kind of a deal. And I had done work on the Conan 2D20 game, but I wasn't like an out front guy. I was one of the Robert E. Howard people that they called in that ended up being able to write game stuff too. So I thought that the ZineQuest project was great anyways. I'm a old school zine guy from back in the day, comics and rock and roll zines and all that kind of good stuff. So I felt that aesthetically that was awesome, and I should probably do something to sort of get my name out. And so I participated in that. And then along the way, I thought, well, I'll just do these zines and then I'll get back to working on Polite Society. And I did the zines, and we came around to next year, and I thought, well, I don't want to do those anymore. I'll just do one zine and then get back to working on Polite Society. So I did that zine and then started to get back to Polite Society. And they said, hey, we're doing another ZineQuest in August. And I went, oh, you gotta be kidding me. Okay, I'll do one thing for that, but then it's back to Polite Society. And then as we rounded the corner on ZineQuest 5, I said, you know what? I'm 80,000 words in on Polite Society, and I need probably another 40 more. What I really need to do is get this out sooner rather than later, because in between August and this year was the announcement about the D&D movie, Honor Among Thieves, and this hardcover book, Keys from a Golden Vault, or from the Golden Vault, which was going to be thief stuff. And I thought, I got to strike while the iron's hot. And then I remembered one of my favorite things of all time ever was the Game Lords Thieves Guild system, their incomplete game and their expansion modules, which were these 36 to 48 page booklets, or they weren't booklets, they were 8.5 by 11. They were these great zines just full of new rules, new heists, all this good stuff that you could do. And I thought, I'll do it as a zine. I'll just do the pieces and parts of Polite Society, and I'll group it all up, theme it together, and do it as a zine. And then when I get through with that, then I'll have already published it. And so it'll just be a matter of basically reassembling it into one or two, good looking paperback books. So it was a matter of knowing myself. If I do a ZineQuest zine, I'm going to do that before I do anything else, because I want to meet those obligations. And I just got tired of keeping polite society on the back burner. And so moving it up to the front, making it a ZineQuest zine, making it quarterly means that I've got stuff to publish right now. And I've also got stuff that I can keep working on while I'm publishing. So that's the advantage of that is now the background becomes the foreground. It's like the plot of a Marvel movie. And then, Kang shows up in the end credits. So, yeah.
That makes perfect sense to me. Another thing I know about you, and I kind of mentioned it in the intro, I know you have a deep running passion for Robert E. Howard's work. How has that influenced? Oh, nice. How has that influenced these zines?
The Appendix N sensibility is alive and well in just about everything that I do. I'm 53 now, but I would like your viewers and listeners to know that I read at the 57-year-old level. So my parents are very proud of that. But I started playing D&D back in 1980, 81. I was back there at the beginning of this. And back then, the only things that we had to go on were novels and comics. And if we were lucky, once every 3 years, we got a movie with a sword in it, or they would show Jason and the Argonauts again on, Saturday afternoon matinee on television or whatever. So if you wanted to inform and enhance your D&D game, you had to dive into books. And so I discovered D&D and Robert E. Howard sort of concurrently. And Robert E. Howard led me to Lovecraft and Fritz Leiber, and those all jumbled together, especially in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, that time where we weren't distracted by Peter Jackson epic saga. We had Beastmaster. we had Conan the Barbarian. We had the Sword and the Sorcerer with a rocket powered blade launching thing on it. So there was all of that stuff kind of went into the hopper like a bingo tumbler, and it all sort of bounced around. And so when I started writing my own material for campaigns, when I started working on back then we just called it house rules for D&D, my own D&D game, it all had that sensibility to it, especially the Gothic ruins, that sort of vibe that Howard put into the Conan stories. Conan shows up at in the ruins of a civilization that was clearly here 1,000 years ago. This stuff was old when he found it. And of course, and we're reading about the Hyborian, age, which was 14,000 years before recorded history. It's this in between, this liminal space, this fourth age. If you're looking at theosophy and stuff. So all of that stuff went in sort of without filter. There was no one to say you're doing it wrong. There was only try it. And so Thieves, the Thieves World series that Robert Aspirin and Lynn Abbey edited, the anthology. Later when TSR published Lankmar, of course, they had a great relationship with Fritz Leiber from the get-go, which was pretty cool. So all of that stuff, is in there and mixed around. And later, before Gygax passed away, he was able to sort of talk about stuff kind of with hindsight, and he was always very upfront about what the essential salts, right? Those essential elements of Dungeons and Dragons were. And it was, essentially it was, Jack Vance, Tolkien, and Howard. Those were the real building blocks for sort of everything that came afterwards. And so, yeah, I like sword and sorcery. I think sword and sorcery, that low fantasy, high stakes sort of environment, is, to me, in some ways, very preferable to sort of a wonderland of, everything is magical, and I think it's easier to manage, both as a game master and as a player, when you don't have all that extra stuff to sort of consider. You can just literally focus in on, oh, the giant slug that just came out of the tomb is trying to kill me. Sometimes that's a really refreshing, simple, thing. It's
Right.
very direct. So yeah, those were key elements, and always have been. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree that the low magic, or I don't know necessarily no low magic, but the riskier play is
Right.
more fun.
Weird.
Than,
Weird magic. Yeah.
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 So if I understand correctly, the only way to actually get physical copies of the Polite Society zines is through backing the Kickstarter, or will they be available after?
Yeah, no, the physical stuff is only going to come out through the Kickstarter. I'm going to do one print run through Mixam, and mail all the zines out by hand. And then the PDFs are going to live on Drive Through RPG. Um, there's a couple of reasons for it. One of the the print on demand hoops that one has to jump through Drive Through RPG are sometimes really frustrating, and I'm not 100% happy with some of their recent choices to simplify their structure. You used to could. I'm a writer, folks. You One of the options available to you for binding used to be saddle stitching, which is the staples. They removed that for zines, and they removed it just at a time when everybody was doing zines, so it was very poor timing on their part. So I knew that these were going to be a certain size, and when you start dealing with square bound 36 page, 48 page style things, it's just awkward. It doesn't quite work right. So I know that Mixam does great work. They do saddle stitching. They saddle stitch Gobsmack, and it's beautiful. Love it. So I thought it would be easier to do that and then just do PDFs on drive through. Also, the PDFs are a lot easier to control on drive through. There will probably come a point where I either gather everything up and make an annual, or maybe just take all of it and do the book I wanted to do in the first place, at which case all I'm doing is deactivating PDFs and putting the trade in.
Gotcha.
Also, I'm asking for more money than I have ever asked for on a Kickstarter campaign. Usually my asks are right around $1,000 or $1,500, because I'm trying to fund all 4 issues, the year's worth of zines right now. My funding goal is $7,500. So knowing that there are some collectors out there, and especially in the zine market right now, which is kind of a thing, I thought that I might have better luck appealing to collectors by saying the physical zines will be limited. If you don't back them through the Kickstarter, they won't be available anywhere else. I mean, I'll probably do an extra 15 or 25 for me for convention appearances, but once they're gone, they're gone. I won't reprint them, and they won't end up somewhere else where you can get it as a physical copy.
Gotcha. I think it's really cool because I am one of those collectors. Hiding behind my screen is my Shelfie of Doom.
I got mine.
Yeah, I am a zine freak. And my fiance looked at Kickstarter and looks at my Kickstarter, and she's like, "How did you become a super backer?" I'm like, "Just look over there."
And nothing to see here. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, it was a little shocking the first real year that I bought stuff for ZineQuest 1. I didn't participate. ZineQuest 2, I was too busy running the campaign. For ZineQuest 3, I only had the one book, Gobsmack, and I kind of lost my mind. I spent hundreds of dollars on zines, and I had a thing. Oh, I'll only get a physical copy of the really cool, different, unique ones. Like if they're doing a format thing, or if it's if it's a risograph, or if it's something that would benefit from being a print deal, I'll do that. But otherwise, I'll back zines and get the PDFs. And it was still hundreds of dollars, and I just I was batching it at the moment at the time, and I was like, oh, thank God. No one's around here to yell at me, because there would have been a fight. I'm sure of it.
No, well, for me, I'm lucky that my fiance is tolerant. I think she figures a game addiction is better than being addicted to other things. So
it beats hanging out on the street corner with the hooligans, singing doo-wop. I mean, that just leads to trouble. Yeah.
So from what I read, and you had kind of a little ha-ha with this too, each zine is going to be about 48 pages. And can you tell potential backers what they're going to find within those 48 pages? It might be a lot to cover, but...
Well, I was actually just beforehand, I was trying to sort of break down a prospectus of the individual issues. I've got some notes here. So, for example, well, for one thing, every issue will have a heist. Every issue will have a heist that you can run in 1 or 2 sessions, guaranteed. I mean,
nice.
Yeah. And it'll be in some detail. If I need a map, we'll put a map in, that kind of deal. Nothing will be statted. And outside of like, this is a +2 pointy stick or whatever. You guys are in much better. You're much better at like figuring out what a bandit is and what a pirate does and stuff like that. So I'm going to and also that saves space. That's more heist that I can put in there if I don't have to worry about stats. So a heist in every issue. Since this is going to be really, initially sort of set up for 5th edition, there's going to be backgrounds in every issue. I'm going to do at least one archetype that is specifically bent for a campaign in a City of Thieves sort of setting. For example, in issue 1, I'm going to be doing one of the character classes that got a lot of playtest action, called the Ruffian. It's basically an unarmed fighter, not a monk, that deals primarily in blunt force trauma. And so as long as he's got as long as he's unarmed or has cestises or just anything like marlin spikes, anything that can fit in his hands that's not like a blade or a simple melee weapon like a club, he can do maneuvers with that and do special attacks with that. And the idea is to build the guy on the team that can walk up to somebody and hit them on the head and they drop unconscious. Fezzik from The Princess Bride.
Yes, that's what
could be a
exactly what came into my head when you said that.
You need that. That's having the bruiser that can knock a guard out with a single punch is really important when you're doing things like, trying to get in without being noticed and without raising an alarm. So that's a character class that I'm going to include specifically for that. I'm also going to talk, every issue will have essays and articles that sort of deal with, an aspect of the game that you can use, that you can change or you can alter, that will bring your thief city into focus. The article in the first issue is kind of a editorial. D&D is a toolbox, not a setting. 5th edition, is an assemblage of stuff. It's not a thing unto itself. And so you are under no obligation for example, to have a radical example would be halflings. If you don't want halflings, you just don't put them in there. But what the article is going to do is it's going to talk to you about the sliders that you adjust on the various parts and pieces of your campaign to make it more OSR / hardcore, more sword and sorcery, more deadly, and less I'll just pop a healing spell out and fix everything.
Right.
You have to have elevated stakes when you're talking about like crime stories and heists and capers. And if you've got somebody on your team that can literally just point a finger and cure 60 points of damage at a whack, then the thing trundling towards all of you is not as scary. You have to be able to, part of the fun of this is going, we did not plan for this. Do we stay or do we go? And so moving those sliders around on your D&D game, can really help. Now, you can still run heists in a high fantasy setting. Absolutely. You just have to kind of think about it differently. You have to plan different things because you have to account for the fact that you've got finger waving magicians that can cause an earthquake, or what have you. So the article is going to deal with that. Future articles, and there may be the same one in this one, is talking about things like setting up retirement. Part of your character creation should be how much money is enough to get you to quit doing this, and then what are you going to do with it once you have it? And so you basically write down sort of a long-term goal. Do you want to own a bar? Do you want to become a tailor? Do you want to go back home and reclaim your ancestral mansion from the villain that kicked you out, and that's why it's all that stuff. There's a ton of those sorts of articles, and that will be in each issue. And then the other thing I really want to do, and this was the zine part of it that kind of excites me the most, I want to do reviews. I want to do point of view style reviews like zines used to have. Back in the day, oh boy, back in the day, when God was a small child and we all rode dinosaurs to the comic shop, zines had a point of view. And a big part of like buying a zine and reading a zine was getting to know the person who was reading it. I think that I do that in my stuff anyways, especially Gobsmack has that vibe, because I was kind of on a punk kick when I was writing about goblins. But there's a lot of old material that is kind of available and kind of not available that modern D&D players, GMs, DMs, all of them have never seen, don't know anything about. And so one of the things I want to do is, for example, an overview of Thieves World, the Chaosium boxed set of Sanctuary.
Nice.
I want to do a review of Game Lord's Thieves Guild setting and their individual books. I want to do a review of, I want to compare all of the Lankmars.
That sounds fun.
Yeah. TSR, Dungeon Crawl Classics, Savage World. If you published a Lankmar, let's get into it. I want to compare it. I'm really excited to stack Dungeon Crawl Classics Lankmar up because they've gone sort of the route that we did with Conan. They went and got access to Lieber's papers and were able to make some corrections to some maps and add some things and include some things that no one's ever seen before. So it's really kind of a scholarly, I won't say it's a scholarly approach because we're talking about, patrons that have, eyes, stalks on tentacles and things like that. So I'm not sure how scholarly Ningobble of the Seven Eyes actually is, but I love that someone actually, did research, went in and crunched all that stuff up and said, let's find something that we haven't seen before. So I'd like to put all those together and sort of talk about it. What worked, what didn't, all that. I think that those kinds of articles are missing. You get them online, sort of, if someone thinks to write about them. But I think in the context of a zine with this kind of a focus, these sorts of things are really invaluable. And not just games. I want to do books and movies as well. I think gaming, role playing per se, is a pastiche art. It is imitative. As fun as it is to make up stuff, we all started making up stuff by writing up the stats for Luke Skywalker's lightsaber and dropping it into barrier peaks, So it's not, and anytime a new book came out, Alan Dean Foster's Spellsinger came out, we all cracked into it looking for things that we could put into our games. Is this cool? Is this not? When the Beastmaster came out, everybody in the world wanted a Kappa, the boomerang hatchet that he throws. Yep. Those were, man, that was the coolest thing we'd ever seen, and even though it's ridiculous, it only works in the movies. If you put it in a D&D game, you're like, there's better weapons. Didn't matter, man. I did the flip and then I threw it and then it came back. How much damage did it do? 1d8. So it didn't knock the sorcerer off the tower like it was supposed to in the movie. Well, no, but so
it was cool.
So all of that stuff, there's still material to be mined, and the heist in fantasy has become a thing. My friend Marshall Ryan Maresca has got a series of books set in the city of Meridane, and he's got they're all interconnected. He's like his own shared world anthology, but he is just himself. But he's got a series of books called the Holver Alley Crew, and it's two brothers trying to go straight, but then something happens and they got to put on the dark makeup and the black cloaks and get back into it again, And so you may not know that that's out there, but if you read the review and be like, oh, okay, that sounds like something I might want to read, you absolutely will, especially if you're wanting to do these sorts of things. There's a number of people who've done some great books out there, and some great movies that people may not know about. So I've got 30 years, I've got about 35 years, if we're being honest, of me like absorbing this stuff at the macro level. So I'm more than happy to share my own personal, I want to call it Appendix R, for rogues, and
yeah,
it's stupid, I know, but
I don't think it's stupid. I like the idea.
But I've got my own list of this stuff where if you want to get more into it, probably everybody that wants to run these games needs to read a few Richard Stark Parker novels. That's Heist 101. I mean, Donald Westlake's Richard Stark was his crime pseudonym. Westlake is a writer's writer. Like if you ask any mystery writer, name your top 5, Westlake's in it, and he's probably in a lot of people's top 3, but the Stark novels are another thing altogether, man. And nobody did heist and caper fiction as well as Westlake did. And he did it for, decades. So there's a stack of these books. There's like he actually wrote to an ending back in the 70s, early 80s, and then didn't think he had anything else to say, and so he went on and had another career writing more mysteries and doing stuff. And then back 1997, 98, 99, somewhere, he started writing a crime novel, and he said, I realized about 2 chapters in, it's a Parker novel, and he hadn't written a Parker novel in all that time. And so that became Comeback, and he did like 7 more Parker novels right up until his death. a few years ago. uh, Highly recommended. I mean, good Lord, they're just the best thing ever. And they're terse and they're lean and they're mean. If you like comics, Darwin Cook did 4 volumes of the Parker stuff, and he kind of did it in the '60s style of was when Westlake was writing this, the '60s and '70s stuff. They're glorious. I again, it's heist and caper fiction 101. And I know, and I don't mean this in a bad way. I know there's a lot of people playing D&D who probably really like heists and want to play a heist fantasy game, but have never read a Donald Westlake or a Richard Stark novel. And if you haven't read at least a couple of Richard Starks and maybe watched a few weird heist movies, it's going to be kind of hard to sort of factor in everything. Those are if not, just view it as educational. It's like a really long YouTube video, but except it's got a plot and has a beginning and a middle and an end, and better actors. And yeah, at a point I was making, I kind of lost the thread, but I think going back to like what's going to be in every issue, that's going to be what's going to be in each issue. I am uncertain at this point if I want to group things up by themes, but I probably will because that's just kind of how my brain works. The goal is going to be to get out all of the new stuff and the tables and the interesting options and the organizational stuff in the first 4 issues. And then if I can fund another set of 4, then that will be campaign planning and stuff along those lines. At some point, the heist generator that I wrote for Tools of the Trade will be updated and reworked for specifically polite society. Tools of the Trade, the heist generator, the engine of the polite society game, is right now available separately, and it is I won't say it's a standalone. It's generic. It's designed so that anybody can pick it up and you can morph it into your fantasy game. What I will do in later issues and maybe even as an add-on is I'll reformat that engine so that it's specifically sword and sorcery. It's specifically using the stuff in the world with the elements that I've put forth, with the understanding that you want to do a low fantasy or a low magic, high stakes sort of a crime game based around a city sandbox. So I think that's going to do. I don't know if I've got 12 issues in me unless I start talking about getting into actually building the city I want to publish separately. I have a fantasy city that I would like to do along the lines of Lankmar and Sanctuary and Haven, but it's too big for this. And if I put it into this project, it doubles the size of the books and it starts making things really unwieldy. I'm more focused right now on just getting the core elements out to people so that they can start playing as soon as possible.
Gotcha. Paul Mears chimed in the chat and says, Mark Finn for the win.
Paul can stay as long as he wants with that attitude. Thank you, Paul. Good to see you, bud.
So you touched on cities here a couple times. One thing I wanted to ask is, why do you think city adventures are often overlooked?
I'm not sure what the thinking is on there, because I do think that if you're a thief, the last place, not to impugn the work of Tolkien, who referred to Bilbo Baggins as a burglar, but the modern rogue as we understand him, and certainly the thief as he was initially presented, was pretty good in a dungeon, but really shined in a city. I mean, that's where Fafhrd and Grey Mouser do all their great work. Conan brought down the Tower of the Elephant in a night. He fought the Red Priest Nabonidus and destroyed Thak and Rouges in the House. He clearly had overstayed his welcome at the beginning of Queen of the Black Coast, where he's literally on horseback being chased by all of the city guard, and gets to the end of the docks and jumps on a boat and says, "Get us out of here," as arrows rain down on them. That to me is the fun of doing a city. And you have to, there's a notion as a game master that you have to know what's in every building and what every shop is and what they sell and all that. And over the years, I have come to the realization and even the implementation that the same types of things you would do when you're starting a campaign sandbox, right, are exactly the same type of things you do in a city. The steps are no different. You don't have to build an entire city. You need a street. You need a neighborhood that they start in. It could be as simple as the docks. You're all wharf rats, but I don't think people and the fact that there aren't a lot of city supplements out there right now sort of backs this up. Nobody's figured out how to run cities. There's this notion, the D&D works off this 3 pillars idea. There's exploration, there's in the wilderness, there's dungeon investigation and spelunking and treasuring, and then there's social role play. And people go, well, that's for the cities. Yeah, but you can do the other things in the cities as well. I mean, who hasn't gone to a city, who hasn't been at a convention in a city they don't know and just decided, I'm going to go explore the neighborhood, right? Even if it's someplace as simple as Madison, Wisconsin, or downtown Cincinnati or whatever, all of those things still hold true. And the difference is that with the city, it's both limiting because you're inside city walls, and it's also expanded. There's a microscopic level by which you can do this, but you don't have to do it all at once. And so part of campaign management for polite society is being able to sort of play fast and loose with your city. You don't have to know how many tailors there are in town. You just need to decide if there's a tailor in this neighborhood that they're in. They're not going to go all the way across town. And especially if you're doing a big, like a city state, right? Like a Greyhawk or a Waterdeep or Sanctuary or Haven or Lankmar, like there's bars and taverns all over town. Well, there's other things too, so breaking cities up into manageable chunks and thinking of it in terms, this is a very video game concept, right? Almost all of the open world video games start you in a little village, or you've got a town, or in Fallout 4 you discover Sanctuary Hills, and there's only like 2 or 3 little things in it that you can fight, and you pretty much have to leave pretty quick. But starting small and letting the players decide where they want to go and what they want to do, sort of that element of the sandbox campaign, you have the advantage of going, well, eventually they're going to hit city walls and they're going to have to go left or right. So right. In some ways it's actually, I think it's freeing, but it's also, I think, very it helps to have those sort of limits, and once players get into the city and start looking around and they start making the neighborhood they're at their home, you can then start kind of thinking what's outside the walls. And then you can, whatever they're interested in is when you start bringing in those outside political elements. Why is everybody being taxed? There's a reason for it. There's a reason why suddenly you've got an uptick in jobs of people stealing things back from other people. So it's just a question of kind of looking at it differently, but also realizing that it's not different. It's the same, I hope that made sense. I feel
It
like
did.
okay.
Nope, it made perfect sense to me.
Thank you.
And Paul actually chimed in again saying, City Adventures used to be core adventure locations back in the day, and we spent literally years as thieves in the city of the invincible overlord.
Yeah, yeah, man. City of the Invincible. Oh, yeah, such a great campaign setting. So full of stuff, and back then, everybody was still trying to figure it out, back in the 80s. And so what's great about if you go look at some of that old stuff, there's a ridiculous amount of detail in there. Oh my God, just crazy amounts of like, you know, the guys at Game Lords, the did Thieves World, or I'm sorry, Thieves Guild and their City of Haven, they were proud of how much they got. Everything, every building was detailed, for crying out loud. There was a great series of books that Flying Buffalo put out, that was called, I think, Cityscape. Was that right? Anyways, there were like 7 or 8 of them, and they were grouped according to sort of like what types of businesses they were for cities and also areas of town. And they were literally fully developed stores that you could just drop into an existing campaign. I remember one of the titles being Butcher, Baker, Candlestick Maker. And so, players got to eat. So here's a bakery that you can drop in, and they did, they spent like a lot of real estate on the page detailing intricate backstories. I love the books. I love them for what they did. I don't think I ever used one in a game because I looked at all of it and went, there's no way I'm going to memorize all this. I mean, it's cool to see the depth of it involved. And so over time, my D&D campaigns simplified to the point that one of the things that I'll be including in this is an NPC management system that lets you basically, if they want to stop and talk to everybody on the docks, you can have them stop and talk to everybody on the docks. But eventually, your players are going to pick somebody through no fault of your own or their own that they want to talk a little bit more to. And then if they say the right thing, or if they ask the right question and they get the answer they want, they're going to find that guy again, when they go back to the docks. And so you develop the NPCs that you need, and don't worry about having everybody done. That's another thing that, this notion of like all this prep for a city. As long as you've got, a handful of names, well, I have 100 names kind of on a paper at any time. As long as you've got 100 names and you've got a kind of a basic system, I find that I wish I had a good example of it. I have an NPC card that's essentially a 3x5 index card. Now, I know that's not revelatory, but it really is everything you need for a DM. You don't need all that stuff. You don't need stats most of the time. I mean, if your characters are squaring off against your tailor, and you look down and realize, I don't know what my tailor's armor class is, this whole session has gone sideways.
Right.
If they're going to kill the tailor, something's gone very wrong. You're off the rails, and you might as well just give them a Vorpal scissors and have at it. But so yeah, I one of the things I love about cities is I like that structure, and I like that that element of exploration, and the fact that you can't just kick in any door, because you never know who's going to be bigger than you on the other side.
Right.
There's some wonderful limitations, and also not just a place to come back and recuperate, but also to have serious adventures, man. My Lankmar campaign for years, we'd start every session with, okay, where are you guys right now? And they'd say, oh, we're at the Silver Eel. Okay, what are you doing? Nothing. All right, so I'm going to pick what we're doing tonight. I mean, yeah, if we're just having a drink. We're just trying to keep it quiet. Okay, so let's see who comes in to pick a fight. Sometimes they'd be like, no, the thing you said last week with the guy who he was doing a thing. What about that? Well, he did mention something about being at the Bazaar of the Bazaar. Okay, we're gonna go there, guys. It's 10 o'clock at night. Are you sure you want to go at night? Oh yeah. What could possibly go wrong? I don't know. Let's just see. Okay, so we're going to the bazaar 2 hours before midnight. Outstanding. So yeah, that was I loved it. My prep was essentially a sheet of paper. I knew some of the major players and who their stats were and everything. Oh, and they never met Fawford and Grey Mouser. They were always out of town, or they'd come into the bar and they'd be, you just missed them. What? Because I didn't want to play Fawford and Grey Mouser as NPC, so I just never had them interact with the guys. After a while they didn't care. It didn't matter because everybody was having too fun, and they had their own relationships with everybody. They stopped hanging out at the Silver Eel and they went to their own place. And instead of the Thieves Guild, they fell in. They got crosswise with the Assassins, and yeah, I mean, done well. You can do anything in a city that you can do in a wilderness hex crawl, that you can do in a dungeon. You can do open world sandbox in a city. You can do Western marches in a city. In fact, a city kind of lets you do all of that at once. And so I won't say it's superior. Because everybody's got their preference. For me, preferentially, if I could play D&D in a fantasy science fiction or a fantasy sword and sorcery city, I don't think I'd ever. Sure, every once in a while, let's go pick a dungeon. Sure, every once in a while, there's a week's ride from here. There's an old fort that somebody says is haunted. Let's go check that out. And that's your change of pace. But mostly people are like, yeah, we got to get back to the city because we got stuff cooking. That's when all right, they've bought in.
Yep, exactly. Paul says, surprise, my tailor is a retired master assassin. And
there you go. What else? Yeah. These scissors have killed more men than you've had hot dinners. Right there. Yeah. Easy peasy.
Your Vorpal scissors have killed
That's
more
right.
men.
These aren't actually scissors. These were trophies given to me by the Order of Thread Cutters for successfully killing 100 clients, 100 targets, and they made me retire. So I kept the scissors as a reminder of my past. But hey, if you want to throw down, we'll do this.
And I agree. Paul actually just said again, cities, it's where the action is, and yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with him.
Yep.
So you had mentioned the subclasses a little while back. Can you give an example, without giving too much away, of a couple of the subclasses you've developed for Polite Society?
I had done an earlier version of this, and I'm going to update it for the zine. I've got two additions to the thief archetype. The first one is called an architect, and they're the master planners. They're the ones that can set up, they can do the interrogation. They know a guy. They're always the people that know a guy. They've got contacts out the wazoo. If the job needs a little extra muscle, I know a guy. The main thing that they can do is one of their big deal is called contingency plan, and it is exactly the flashback, because that is a trope. I hate that word, but it is. It's a fixture of capers, especially on film and television. But being able to rewind and see how, no, they're not really trapped because we paid the guard last week to put a key in the lock on the other side. So the door's not actually locked, it's open, and we can all run out. Or we hired someone to infiltrate the kitchen staff, and she has slipped a short sword under the cushion of each one of the seats at the dinner table. So all we have to do is reach underneath our cushion, and now we're suddenly armed, right? Whatever that thing was that you needed to have happen to get you out of this, that's what the architect brings to the table. And the other one that I really like, because it speaks to world building, is the divine archaeologist. This is the This is basically church sanctioned larceny. Uh, this was really inspired by Lankmar. All those gods on the street of gods. Especially in a campaign like this where you have what I think of as small gods. There's not big. There can be, but there's just as many like smaller, minor, and variations of the same type of religion, sort of like how we have now. Um, at one point, um, about 500 years ago, things were really bad, and a lot of property got destroyed in some wars, and a lot of buildings got smashed, and a lot of things got looted, and so stuff has ended up in different places. And periodically, church scholars might notice that the Temple of Mitra over in Riverton has got a gold statue that we are positive belonged to us here in Farrington 500 years ago. And it would be a shame if something were to happen to it. But here's some traveling money and a horse and a wagon. You call us when it's done, And so they send out thieves who have basically their deity's blessing, in the form of they can't cast healing spells, and they can't do any kind of laying on of hands. But there's a lot of utility spells that clerics have that would look really good for thieves, to use. And so it's basically a thief class with clerical spells instead of arcane spells. And one of the things that I wanted to include in this is, because you're church sanctioned, you also kind of have access to the deities in question. And so periodically, you could just as easily call upon divine intervention like a cleric could. And if the deity pulls your fat out of the fire, you can bet they're going to want something in return. That guy over there has a statue that used to be this thing, and so it's really just more of a story / heist generator on its own. But I love the idea that that literally Deus Ex Machina kept you from being shot out of a cannon by the pirate king Cellulus, and now you're on the hook to figure out a way to make it to the bottom of the bay and recover the golden orb that the deity is sure is down there. So those are just a couple of examples for the thief class. I have one of the character classes that's not in the system reference document is the artificer. When I did years ago, when all this was being developed, alchemists were non-player characters, and then in subsequent editions of Dungeons and Dragons, they came back in. And so I'll be writing a new version of the artificer. I won't use the artificer template, but I specifically want to do, if someone wants to play an alchemist in a low fantasy campaign, alchemy is pretty useful. The other thing that's really great about alchemy is a potion is a one-shot thing. So crafting a potion to get you over the wall is great, but unless you've got a second potion to get you down off that wall, you've now got to rely on stuff. So I like the idea of one-shot objects, and an alchemist, and also within this sort of flowering is the apothecary, which is they're basically the healers. Alchemists are going to do potions. They're going to do jumps and flights and alterations. Apothecaries are going to deal with healing, poison resistance, immunities to stuff. If you're stealing treasure from a fire drake, having an immunity to fire potion would be really useful,
Yep.
and then the other two classes that are going to be part of this subclass is the Poisoner, which is a subclass of Alchemist, which is a subclass of Apothecary, and the Skulldugger. Skullduggers are going to be my Artificer. Skullduggers are the guys that create little devices called gimmicks that you can use to cheat at cards, help you pick a lock. These little interesting clockwork mechanical apparatus that if you need a ring with a hollow compartment, skullduggery. And I love that name, Skulldugger. I think that's a really cool. This is specifically the guy that the Thieves Guild, hires and protects, because he's the guy that makes all the cool equipment. He can repair thieves' tools. This is an important thing. He can also augment thieves' tools. So, in case you've got an unpickable door lock, he can craft a mechanical spider that uses its 8 legs as lock picks and allows you to do a complicated lock picking sequence that you couldn't do with the hand, with a single hand, stuff like that. So I think those are really cool wrinkles, and it also addresses something I don't like about the D&D Artificer, which is that everything is so saturated with magic, and
Yep.
I wanted some things that you can use in a game that would be useful in a game, that would be cool to play in a game, but aren't just explained by, oh, well, it's just magic. And that's what the Artificer is in current D&D. Yeah, he just magically does stuff, and he can make things come to life. Yeah. I mean, again, if that's the game you're playing, great and awesome. And I'm not going to knock it. I personally would rather there be some stakes involved. So that was the idea behind these new archetypes and what they sort of represent. Again, focused narrowly on criminals committing crimes, heists, robbery, thievery. I put this in the Kickstarter. Every thief is a rogue, but not every rogue is a thief.
Yep.
Yeah. You can be a thief and be a fighter. You can be a thief and be a sorcerer. You can be a thief and be any, a thief is not a character class. It's a avocation, I guess. So I wanted to sort of take that out, and so anybody that's in your game can participate in the heist. But there will be some classes that are going to be, I think, probably a little better at doing some of that stuff. And I wanted that for people who wanted to play something more traditional, in that respect.
Gotcha. Yeah, I can't stop picturing the little spider with the lock picks on it. That sounds so cool.
Well, I want, the other thing about that is that's going to be a thing that where players have a little say, someone who's gone the route of Skulldugger, once they get access to these components, there will be the ability to create something on the fly. It is a one-shot item and it won't look good, but downtime will let you craft devices, and it's the kind of thing where you work with your GM. You tell your GM what you want. Your GM has a little menu that he decides what the level of that is, what you need to meet or exceed in order to build that. And then, with it, we determine, does it have charges, all that kind of stuff. But it's a way for a player to say, I notice we keep doing this and we never have a thing for it, so I want to make a thing for it. And that was always something that I liked about, a good back and forth game of Dungeons and Dragons, or, what have you. There should, you should never be told, nah, you can't do that. Yeah. Let's absolutely. That sounds really hard, but tell me what your plan is, and we'll figure out what the role is. And if you don't make it this time, that's not scrapped. It just means you got to wait a level. You know, you got to read some more books. You got to find some more things. And you can try it again, and the roll will be a little bit better this time. So, I love that. I love that idea of specialized equipment for gameplay. You know, you'll be your crew, the people that you play with. You know, you're going to have a play style, and skullduggers and poisoners and alchemists and apothecaries can lean into that and support it.
Yeah, it sounds really, really cool. And I wholeheartedly agree with you of not saying no.
Right. Yeah.
I'm a big, there have been very few times at my table that I have ever said no.
Right.
And yeah, that's the whole point of using your imagination, is so you get to hear that, give it a shot, give me a roll for it.
And I think the people that want to play thieves and rogues are not always people that think outside the box, but I have found that most of the people at the table that think outside the box are the people playing the thieves and the rogues. And so knowing that there's an elementary system in play that GMs can use when Lloyd gets a crazy idea into his head is good for GMs, and it's good for Lloyd, because Lloyd goes, okay, if I put too much of this in here, I'm not going to be able to make the roll. So I need to think, think in terms of economy, and so, yeah, all of that plays into this. I mean, like you, I've played Thieves and Rogues the whole of my adventuring, my gaming career. So some of this is born out of like, what would I want? If what did I want to do when I was playing that I never got to do? And then other parts of it are, I've seen how playtest groups react, and I've seen how my regular D&D party reacts, and I think anytime you can roll with their wackadoodle idea, it always makes the game better.
It does. It really does.
Yeah.
So will there be rules for creating a Thieves Guild? We've kind of talked about them a couple times here.
I have I want to address. Yes. The short answer is yes. There will be there will be a means of doing that. I have put at the back of Tools of the Trade a criminal enterprise random generator that will let you build a criminal organization, and within that system is the architecture for, and this is how they became a Thieves Guild. But there's other ways to become criminals, and there's other things that where the emphasis is for criminal conspiracy. I think the thing about Thieves Guilds that I kind of want to maybe not address, but I want to broaden the scope of what that entails. The Thieves Guild was a thing that Liber did for Fafhrd and Grey Mouser because the city had an entrenched bureaucracy, and the notion that even crime came, you had to pay your dues to do that. That was part of the sort of the sardonic nature of the stories, which is fantastic. These days, what a Thieves Guild is it's become kind of a sort of a standard of fantasy gaming, and I'd like to open that up a little bit. Let me just the example I keep thinking about is, what if the Moneylenders Guild was not on the up and up? I mean, what if they were overcharging on everything? What if they were skimming? What if there was somebody in the Moneylenders Guild that was passing bad coin, and handing it out as loans and as part of the wages, earned? What if the person making the money, or the person that actually melts and makes the coins, was putting lead and just gold plating the coins. So basically they're sinkers. They're essentially worthless. They're slugs. There's much more there to work with on a citywide level than the guys who basically are taking a cut of all of the pickpocket change. You know, this notion that the Thieves Guild has to be Fagin and a bunch of urchins, is part of the thing I want to sort of get away from. I think, especially now, 2023, we have a different idea of what a criminal conspiracy is, what criminal elements are, and there's nothing. Certainly a formalized Thieves Guild, there's nothing wrong with that, and they can be just as effective. But I would say, even if you were doing that structure at Thieves Guild, think bigger, because if they were thieves, they would. And there's no reason to think that a Thieves Guild wouldn't be operating in hidden, wouldn't be disguised as a different guild or a church or something, so that they could take money in, and they could take that money and then they could spend it on nobles or politicians or royals that could influence things, that could make, increase the shipping lanes so that they've got more plunder to loot through. You have to just sort of expand outside the notion of, we want to get Fawford and Grey Mouser on our side because they're cutting into our profits. Again, not a bad start, but a good Thieves Guild should be bigger. And so I think I will talk about setting all of that up with an eye towards, if you want them to be a guild structure, that's great, but they can also be a cabal, they can be a junto, they can be they can be a confederacy, they can be a democratic a democratic body where all of them get a vote, and the leader gets to, they can be a council, a tribunal, and they can be any other thing too. So I think that's as soon as you start looking at that, you really open up what's possible, and you also make really specifically good bad guys for your crew to go after. I mean, it's one thing to be thieves and pull heists, but I think most players, even today, kind of want to be good guys, or at least don't want to be bad guys. And so if you Robin Hood your way through it, we're going to find the criminal organizations and we're going to steal from them and keep it or give it back, or both, to whoever we think needs it. Or you can just do straight up leverage, we'll get your money back because it's not fair that so-and-so took it, or your idol or your horse or whatever it is your thing is. Those are evergreen concepts, and you can roll with those in adventures for a long time. So
it's funny, as soon as you said most people want to be good now, that was the first thing that popped into my head, and you said it was Robin Hooding it.
Yeah.
And Paul says, make thieves guilds fun again. And
yes. We'll put the fun back in fundamentally corrupt.
Yes. Let's see, we already talked about that. So going into some of the, I guess you'd say, the back end stuff with the project, what are some of the stretch goals that you have lined up that players can look forward to?
I did not, honestly, I decided I wanted to, so I already have a lot of this stuff written. The majority of the work is done or in the process of being done right now. So I wanted to keep the thing under control. I have a very bad habit of overproducing, which is great if you're a backer. I tell you, I'm doing a 48-page zine and you get a 64-page zine, man. You can't be upset about that because it's all extra stuff. But I'm really going to try and limit the size for budgetary purposes, for mailing purposes, for sort of I need to rein it in so I can work faster and better. So the stretch goals are going to be support for me. I want to increase the art budget and bring in better color cover paintings and stuff like that. I also want to be able to put really nice original art inside the books where possible. I think I won't have a lot of room for it because of how big the zines are. But when you hit an illustration, I want people to go, damn, that's cool. I also want to hire some people to help me with writing. I specifically have some writing that I want to do that is, I think, going to be a lot of fun, but I may not be able to do the fun writing because I need to do X, Y, or Z. So I want to hire somebody to write some reviews for me. I really want a proofreader, and I want a graphic designer, because I do Photoshop the way the surgeons in MASH do surgery. It's meatball, okay? And it's serviceable. My layouts are fine. They're just not inspired. My graphic design is great. It's readable, it's legible, it's okay. I am thoroughly adequate, and I know it. But I would like to get somebody for whom this is the thing that they do all the time, and I would like to work with them and art direct them and make a template zine that will be cool and neat. And so the stretch goals are really technical, frankly. I just want to make a better zine. And what I'm funding for right now is the Mark Finn show. With this, you get me, you get my friends who can do great art and owe me a favor. And if you've seen some of the other stuff that I've done, then you know that this is going to be right there in that wheelhouse. But overfunding, I'm going to give that money to other people and say, make this cool. So,
nice.
Or let's not say cool. I think it's going to be cool. I really do. I want to make it cooler. I want it to be something where you pick it up and you're like, dude, oh man, he said it was going to be great, but I didn't know it was going to be this great. And I'm going to be like, yeah, that's the guy from Guatemala that does nothing but make zines, or that's the guy from Holland that I found that's awesome, or whatever. And so, yeah, I want to do that. It's time for a staff. And let me just say this out loud. If anybody from Cobalt or Paizo is looking to change up a career path, please get in touch with me, care of this YouTube channel, and I will be more than happy to take you on a trial basis. There's no money involved, but we'll have a great time, and I'm good for pizza and beer. So if you guys want to hop ship and join the winning team, I'm your guy. Okay. I can't make it any more attractive than that.
I love it. Excuse me. So one thing that's happened in the past month, so I got curious of when I saw that this was going to be a 5e zine, was what went through your mind when Hasbro announced they were going to be changing the OGL, and how would that have impacted this project that you've been trying to get off the ground for 20 years now?
So when they did the product announcements at the end of last year, and one of the things that they announced was Keys from the Golden Vault, which the guy that was pitching said, it's like Ocean's 11, but meets Dungeons and Dragons. It's going to be great. And I thought to myself, for the past 5 years, I've been telling everybody who says, what's this about? I say, it's basically a cross between the Fellowship of the Rings and Ocean's 11. What what if instead of going to destroy the ring, they were going to steal it? And everybody goes, "Oh, that's cool." And I go, "That's polite society right there." So I was really frustrated. I was really frustrated, honestly. Um, but I also knew that this was probably inevitable because, as I said, fantasy heists have been a thing for a while now, and it's been a subset, and it's been kind of flying under the radar. But if you once I show you what they are, you go, "Oh, there's a lot of these things." I go, "Yeah, there really are." So I had to make the decision if I was gonna. Part of me wanted to just sort of throw the towel in, uh, and start over and make it modern day and do the thing I was gonna do long ago. And then I thought, no, I've come too far on this. I've written too much. And at this point, I'm really in love with this idea of sort of bringing back one of the beloved elements of my old school grognard inaugural D&D experience, which was, role playing in Lankmar and Sanctuary and all that. So I made the decision that next year was going to be the year that I do the game. And even if it had to come out later, that's fine. And then as ZineQuest loomed closer is when I came up with the idea that no, I can do it as a zine, and I can get in front of it, and I can get a little ahead of it, and I can also get in front of the movie. I didn't really care about the book at the time. I was more concerned about I was going to use the movie to sort of like, draft off of off of that campaign, Fast and Furious style, right? Water deep drift. But so when Wizards of the Coast shit the bed in December and thoroughly fouled the nest and obliterated 2 decades of goodwill, I was like, well, that's it. I didn't know where we were going. I didn't know what we were going to do. And I vacillated back and forth. How punk rock can I get? How F this was I going to be and just publish it anyway, scrub everything that looks like what Watsy's doing and just put the rest out. So I literally watched kind of on pins and needles. It wasn't until, really sort of like 2 weeks before, it was a week before the final decision came down. I had my finger over the button to like send it to Kickstarter, because you got to submit and wait a few days and they've got to approve it and all this. I was doing this, like, if I don't hurry, I'm going to miss, getting in on this. I was set to go on February 1st. And so when they caved is when I hit the button, but I was really, really on the fence about it. I didn't know what that would do. And I'll tell you what I had decided before they caved, because I didn't see that coming. Did anybody see that coming?
No.
What I had sort of decided to do was not publish during Zine Month and spend the time finding another game with an OGL that was comparable to what, I was working with. And so I bought probably 4 or 5 systems that I'd been meaning to try, and cracked back into Dungeon Crawl Classics and Worlds Without Number and just a bunch of stuff, and started trying to figure out what the new home for polite society was going to be. And so they caved in and said, okay, now it's all open license, Creative Commons and all that. And so the things in there that are going to be 5e, the archetypes and the backgrounds are going to specifically be that, because I've already done the work on them. Everything else is going to be system neutral. And as soon as I figure out what the orc looks like and Black Flag, what they're going to be doing. If I can incorporate that, I'll incorporate that. This was a thing back in the day. Keep using that expression. When Chaosium published the Thieves World boxed set, right? That was basically the city of Sanctuary. There was a big map, and then there was a small map of the maze, which was the Thieves Quarter. Then there were a couple of books that talked about, the major personalities, and here's all the stuff. And kind of the heart of that system was this city encounters guide that Midkadima Press put together. Those guys, their tagline for years was "We make cities."
Oh, nice.
Oh yeah. And if you go back and look at that, it was a really intricate system of generating random encounters based on where in the, what section of town you were in, if it was day or night. And then, off of that, you did a series of rolls, and here's what's coming down the street at you. Or when we walk into this neighborhood, what do we see? You see this. It was very good. It's fantastic. But the other thing that they did, they had stats for those characters for every major game out at the time. They had Sanctuary stats for Tunnels and Trolls. They had Sanctuary stats for RuneQuest. They had Sanctuary stats for AD&D. They had Sanctuary stats for Chivalry and Sorcery. There were like 5 or 6 different major systems. There might have been 7 in all. Anyways, the point was they just, when they said system neutral, what they really meant was system everything.
Right.
Like all of, they covered everything. So that was another example of like, yeah, all right. I'm not beholden to AD&D, or 5th edition. I like what I like about it, but if I need to do backgrounds, I could repurpose backgrounds for Worlds Without Number. I could build a background and a different starting system for Dungeon Crawl Classics, for Old School Essentials. This stuff ports over pretty easily because most of the games now have a background and have some starting stats and some skills. One of the things that I really I can't wait to get to it in the zines is 0 level funnels. I know that's a DCC thing, but it doesn't have to be. And so a really great campaign starter for a Thieves game is to literally start everybody at 0 level and do the thing where you make up 3 or 4 characters, right? And there's a guy running your crew. He has told everybody that we're having an all thieves meeting at the park at the end of the evening. We're all going to show up because he's looking at consolidating us. And I think we should go listen to what he has to say. And then you get there and you find out that, nope, it was a trap. The city guard decided to put all the bad eggs in one basket, and they're now raining arrows down on you. And so now your mission is to get home. So basically it's the Warriors.
Warriors. Come out and play. Yes.
And everybody that, and your funnel is, you got to make it home without getting killed. And whoever, and by the way, the first volley arrows kills your leader. So you're rudderless now. You got nobody but yourselves. And so whoever's left, all right, we made it. But now we've got to sort of settle with the city guards. Congratulations, you're all first level. You're now a crew. What do you want to do next? So these are the things that I think are, those don't require, that sort of setup doesn't require stats to operate. And so I think that that's going to be, going forward, I'm going to be looking really long and hard at more system neutral stuff or things that I can easily stat out in such a way that you can look at this and go, oh, okay. All I have to do is do this, this, and this, and I can put this in my my DCC Lankmar game, right? And if Polite Society goes past 2 volumes, I will by that point be in a position to where I can write specific things for specific systems, and I would do that as well, just to
Nice.
sort of add to the variability of it. But for now, I kind of need to go home with the date that brung me, because that's where most of the work is. And as soon as that's free and clear, you know, I'll get a new dance card and we'll try something else.
Nice. Paul chimed in a couple more times, and Paul, thank you so much for being so active in the chat.
Yeah, Paul's a buddy. So yes, thank you for showing up, Paul. Really appreciate it.
He said, based on Mark's past efforts, he knows that this is going to be excellent. And then he also asked if you have looked at Black Sword Hack. It's a version of Black Hack with a more Cockian, Howardian bent to it.
I haven't looked at that, but it's on the stack. I went and got Index Card RPG. What was the Basic Fantasy. There were a few others. The Forbidden Lands. The
Forbidden Lands is
really
cool.
nice. Yeah. All of they're doing a open game license now too.
Yep.
So very excited about all of that stuff. And so yeah, I'm trying not to I'm trying not to predict anything. There might very well be a time after this gets done or gets close to done where I decide to do a sword and sorcery campaign setting like I've always wanted to do and have not seen anybody do. That was part of where this sort of came from. You know, I've been waiting for years for somebody to do something like this. And when somebody would do something like this, I'm going to use Blades in the Dark and not to impugn the game at all, because I think the source material for Blades of the Dark is absolutely top notch. I think he did a fantastic job of world building. I don't personally like the Powered by the Apocalypse system. I find it very hard for me to get my head around it, and so I'm not a fan of the components of that. But I love the setting for Blades in the Dark. But Blades in the Dark didn't do what I wanted to see done for a heist setting. Leverage got really close, but you're playing Leverage, and you're not necessarily playing, you know, the mall in Accursed Zamora, in Conan's time. So, you know, it was a case of, if you want something done, you know, you do it yourself. So after this is done, I'm giving serious consideration to either writing a book in a system that kind of already has all the things that I want. I'm not interested in making a new from scratch game system. I'm just not. I'm too old for that, and I'm not sure that I'll be able to add anything to the discussion. So what I will look for going forward is the thing which has the most stuff already built into it, that I don't have to move any levers and sliders on, right? If I only have to move like one lever here and one lever here, or don't have to touch anything at all, and I can just write a sword and sorcery setting, boy, that'd be perfect. And so when I figure out what that system is, you know, that will probably move that forward. But for now, I'm really enjoying finally getting all this stuff out of my head. I'm at the point in the project where I don't know if any of you have ever been a writer or an artist, or worked in comics or even done music or whatever. There's a point at which you're kind of sick of looking at it internally. You know, there's this real need to just get it out.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm at with this. I'm at the point where, like, I can't noodle on this anymore. It's as done as it's going to be. And, you know, getting it out will be the minor changes that I need to make on it are going to be done as I'm typing. It won't be a thing where I have to go back to the drawing board, because I've worked and workshopped and reworked this stuff until I really think my eyeballs are going to fall out. That's why I'm wearing glasses right now, to
Just to
keep
hold
my
them in.
eyes in my skull. That's right. If these glasses came off, my eyes just roll across the floor. It's not pretty.
So we kind of touched on keys to the Golden Vault.
Yes.
And I think the answer is going to be a lot, but I want to hear how you think it would work. How much do you think that Polite Society could enhance the adventures within that anthology?
I've seen pieces and parts of it. I've not seen the whole thing. So I don't know what the introductory remarks are like, but I do know that they've kind of touched on some things, but not everything. And so, and I say this with all due respect, I'll take the Pepsi challenge with anything in that book in terms of what I'm going to be bringing to market. It looks like they are covering some staples and some time honored things about a good heist, but I'm positive that I've got more than they can cover in their book in my material, and I'm positive that not everything that they're suggesting for each one of these things will be something that you'll necessarily want to do or could do or whatever. So yeah, I'm confident that Polite Society could absolutely work in conjunction with this. Um, I'm not going to go so far as to say that the DMs guild um, infrastructure or ecosystem or biome or however you want to refer to it, they're going to do their thing anyways, right? I guarantee somebody's already got 100 trinkets for the Golden Vault are ready to go and is just waiting. And somebody else has written, here's 100 encounters for the Golden Vault. And I'm just waiting to push the button when it drops. I know those guys are on it, and good on them for doing that, but yeah, mine's a little bit more constructive. I'm showing you how the sausage is made. Okay. They're that's kind of the difference. Their book says, here's some sausage. You can cut it, you can slice it, or you can stir it up in some stir fries. And either way, these are all great. See what your players want to do. And my stuff says, here's how to make sausage. And
Gotcha.
that's a terrible analogy, but
no, it makes sense though. I
like pork. Okay, Dave, sue me.
Who doesn't like
pork? I'm a little peckish right now. All right. But no, that really is the difference. The stuff that's in tools in the trade errs on almost being too complete. I really wanted, what I didn't want was for one of my friends, my fellow writers or somebody else I know that's a crime aficionado or whatever. One of the groups that I run on Facebook is the Violent World of Parker, which is a Richard Stark sort of a crime and heist group. The last thing I wanted them to do was go, I can't believe you did this whole thing about heist and you didn't include this, which was only in 3 different novels. And because there's somebody will find that one thing. And so I really, I took my time and really tried to shake out every possible sort of iteration. Some of it might even be, I'll say it might be too much. And so I know, for example, when we get into Polite Society, the tables are going to change a little bit and they're going to be a little different and they're going to be a little more focused because I don't feel like I need to do a warts and all sort of a thing. You can certainly put those extra things in there, but the structure of building the heist will be the same. And what's going to make it work is what's in there. So the tables that I've got right now will work wonders with their hardcover. And in fact, I think I've got some really practical advice in there that maybe they cover and maybe they don't. I don't know. I just know that I've got more material in my head than is going to end up in the book. And I do not mean that as a dig. I'm saying, if anything, it's a dig this way, because there's something wrong with me. I shouldn't have read this much heist fiction, but I did. And now you're paying the price for it, folks. I got to get this out of my head. So yeah, I mean, again, I don't want them to fail. I wish them well. And I'm the people that worked on it. I'm sure they were excited to be working on it. It's a neat project. I know it's a neat project because I came up with it 5 years ago. I know it's neat. So it's great that they're doing it. They've got these wonderful production values. I mean, you can't, the artwork in it is just beautiful. There's just gorgeous. And in terms of high fantasy, I saw a picture of a thief leaping from the top of a building towards a tower, the bottom part of which has fallen, and then the rest is just floating in space. So he's leaping up and across to get to this literally, floating tower. And I'm like, oh, that's a cool. I mean, yeah, who wouldn't want to do that? You know? So if you're so inclined and you want to partake, go for it. I think if you buy my stuff too, you'll be able to really, I think, kick it up a notch. But I'll probably look at it. I won't look at it right away, but I will probably at some point in time look at it. In fact, you know what? I'll tell you what, I'm going to call my shot right now. I will include a review in the first issue. There nice. You go. I'll review it in the first issue so that, you'll get my totally biased and not at all even-handed assessment of how well they did, Yeah, there it is. An exclusive. Look at that.
Nice. I like it.
Now I got to make a note.
Do a review.
Yeah. Yep. So there you go.
All right. So if there's anyone that's still sitting on the fence really as to whether or not they want to back this project, what would you say to them?
You might be hesitant because it seems very specific. It might feel like a niche product to you. And certainly if you're going to do it, you may not have it in you to do that as a campaign, or build your own city, or run a bunch of thieves or whatever, and that is absolutely fine. Let me suggest to you that the structure of a heist and a caper is a very specific kind of a structure. I won't say that there are rules, but it follows a certain pattern. And as a working DM or GM or whatever M you might be, anytime you've got a new pattern that you can play with is a good thing. Anytime you can throw your existing group of players something a little different, that's a good thing. And so even if you don't do a whole series of criminal exploits like I'm advocating for, I think running the occasional heist, or you don't even have to call it a heist. They may not know it's a heist. That's one of the nice things about the way that these sort of come together, is that they may find themselves and realize, oh, it's a heist. We're in the middle of a heist. We didn't know we were in a heist. That can be great. And those sorts of like change them up adventures are really great for breaking monotony. They tend to be, those change of pace adventures tend to be the ones that the characters remember, and we'll talk about down the road. And so treating it as a story generating device, and something that you're not going to see in any of the other books, because again, I waited for years for someone to do something like this, and then eventually realized I had to do it myself. So I would suggest that if nothing else, you back the PDFs and maybe grab the add-ons, Gobsmack and Tools of the Trade. And if you want, you can even grab Ogre's 11. And by the way, Ogre's 11 is going to have 13 heists in it. Yeah, it's 13 heists that can be played all by themselves, or you can string them together and make a campaign. Where have I heard that before, Dave? Where have I heard that before?
I wonder.
I wonder. But all that's there, and you can come in very easy, and it would help a lot. And the stretch goals are Ogre's 11 is in production right now. The other two are ready to go. And so as soon as Ogre's 11 is uploaded, I will send all three out long before the first issue shows up in October. So you could start monkeying around with all that stuff right away. So
Nice.
there we go. I hope I convinced you. And if I didn't, hey, cool beans, brother. I'll catch you on the other side. There'll be other zines, but this one, just know this has been near and dear to my heart, and I've been sitting on it for a long time, and I'm really, really excited to finally get to show this to people outside of my playtest groups or friends who've looked it over and said, this is badass. I'm ready for regular people to look at it and go, holy crap, I didn't know I needed this. So
well, it's funny because I saw this and I was like, this is what I've always needed. And I was the exact opposite of it. I was just like, I need this yesterday.
I appreciate that. And yeah, I think for folks like us, there's not a lot of it out there. It's so weird, kind of, that from like 1980 to 1985, there was this period where there was all this like thief campaign, storytelling, city adventure stuff that was being done. And that was at the height of satanic panic, right?
Yeah.
I mean, at the time when the last thing you wanted to do was give anybody any material to yell and burn a D&D book. Here's all this stuff about how to be a bad guy.
Yep.
and then when that went away and they started focusing on heavy metal lyrics in music, all of a sudden it's weird. D&D did some city books and they did a couple of things. Nothing they ever did was the equal of what they did for Lankmar, and other companies back in the early aughts did their campaign city, but then it all seems like it's dropped off really precipitously in the last few years. And so I'm bringing it back. Let's see. It's not. I'm not bringing sexy back. I'm bringing sassy back. That's right.
Nice. I love it.
Yeah.
So, is there anything that we didn't touch on that you would like to talk about? I feel like we covered a lot of ground here tonight.
I feel like I feel like I probably talked too much.
I don't think so.
Let's see. No, I can't think of anything. I should just a quick plug, if anybody is listening that is a Robert E. Howard fan and you haven't been to the Robert E. Howard House in Cross Plains, Texas, I'd recommend that if you are capable of making that pilgrimage, that you do it. It's a once in a lifetime sort of a thing. Nearly everyone that I know of that has gone has found themselves profoundly impacted, if not outright transformed by it. And boy, does that sound pretentious and very woo, but it's the truth. Yeah, it's a great gathering, and you get to go be with people who get it, who you get to be with people who like the same things about the stuff that Robert E. Howard wrote that you like.
Right.
And so this year it's going to be the last weekend in April. And you can go to robertehowarddays.com and you can find that online, or you can get it on Facebook as well. There's details about that. This year, it's the centenary of Weird Tales, the 100th anniversary of Weird Tales magazine. And John Betancourt's going to be the special guest of honor. I'll be there along with a lot of the other Robert E. Howard luminaries, people that, if you've read any of the introductions in comic books that I've written or that Other people have written in the books. Almost everybody that's in the Robert E. Howard world comes for this. So it's a really, really special thing. And I'm wanted to mention that because we talked a little bit about Robert E. Howard, but also, and Paul has been to Howard Days several times and can attest to its coolness. But yeah, it's a really, really neat thing. And it's the kind of thing that yeah, once you go, you find you want to come back.
I wish
It's a
I
good
could
thing.
go. I would love it. And he has two things. He said, Holly says hi, hugs, and kisses. And then he
Sure.
said, Howard Days in April this year, no heat stroke.
Right. That's yeah. Yeah. Usually, yeah. In the past, it's been the second week in June. This is an attempt to see if doing it at the end of April would be like 75 degrees less heat intensive.
Oh boy.
You know, but yeah, totally. Thanks, Paul. Tell Holly I said hi back, and thanks again for hanging out in the chat, man. I really appreciate you being here for this.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. It was nice having someone in there to chat with us and throw in the I don't want to say odd because they weren't odd comments, but you know what I mean, the frequent comment and question. And
Oh no, they're odd. Paul's odd. He's cool with it. It's all right.
Well, Mark, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I'm
It's
really
been my
hoping,
pleasure.
and I can't wait for this Kickstarter to fund. I'm going to do everything I can to really spread the word.
Thank you.
Again, folks, the link to the Kickstarter is in the description below. So jump over and back it and make Polite Society a reality. If you enjoyed this interview, give it a like. And if you're up for it, subscribe to the channel. I'd love to get more eyes in front of my interviews. I love doing this. And yeah, thank you so much and have a great night, folks. Good night.
Take care. Thanks.